so-called, there have been very few in the past holy people who simply, in India, they've always existed in any generation in India, there have always been a few holy men or women who never did anything. And that's very rare for the West. They say, well, what did they create? What did they do? And they never did anything. They just sat there. And the West says, what a useless existence. Come on, get a life, get a job. And some even, because people, when you're trapped in form, you misperceive it completely, because all you see there is a useless form sitting, and they say they are parasites on society. They allow themselves to be fed by other people. They bring them their food. They should work for a living, like myself. And that is when the mind that knows nothing but form looks at the form, it will totally misperceive it. And so that's the beauty that in India they've always recognized that, because they haven't completely lost touch. In fact, they may have gone at some point too far in the opposite direction, so that they lost interest in form because they went into being more. Now India is becoming Western. The more you read about India, you more see they're all into computers these days and cell phones. And that's fine too, but the question is, where's finding a balance? I was totally lost in, like most people, completely lost in form, and then a shift happened, and I lost the balance, and I became completely lost in the formless. We can't really be lost in the formless, it's just a way of putting it, because the formless is essentially who you are, and yet, from a normal perspective, it looked as if I had lost it. Because there was somebody who had a promising career, and suddenly he just sits around on park benches, not doing anything anymore, just being and tasting continuously the sweetness of being, of simply the beauty, the sweetness of being alive, the joy of simply being. And then looking upon the world and seeing it reflected in all life forms, reflected the joy of being in the trees and the birds, and even in the humans who are running around like mad, and knowing that deep down there's also the very same being. And it's beautiful. And so from an external perspective, the ability to handle forms was gone, to manipulate the world of form was gone for a while, and then gradually had to re-establish itself, so I could do again, and of course be at the same time. And that is it is not the destiny of each one of you to move so deeply into being that you're no longer capable of handling the world of form around you. That happens occasionally, but it tends to happen more to those people those few who experience a dramatic shift from one to the other, and then for a while they're gone. There's of course the beautiful sutra of Buddha, Gate, Gate, gone, gone, gone to the farthest shore. And yet, it seems it is our destiny here, while we are still in form, to balance form and formless here. And that's why we are here. And for most of you, the transition to a new, and what is the new state of consciousness that's arising? It is the state that is balanced. The two dimensions, the manifested and the unmanifested, balanced in a human being. And that is such a radical transformation that when a certain number of humans live in that way, so they become what before was a work of art, you become the work of art. You become that which is transparent to the formless, the divine, that shines. And then that will change the entire world. The way what you experience as the human-made world will be changed completely. It is not necessary to speculate now what is the world going to look like when enough humans live in the new consciousness. That's not important now. The important thing is for us to enter that new state. And then what that does to your story, who knows? How that changes the story, the way in which your life unfolds in time, what you do out here, how that affects where you live, what you do, and so on. You cannot predict, nor do you need to predict that. Are you going to become a great artist? Are you going to win Wimbledon? And of course, bear in mind that great artists and the tennis players, they are not enlightened masters. They have access to that which is greater than the limited human mind in the small field of their activity. And most of them, when they go back into normal life, away from where they have mastery, they are just as mad as everybody else. And sometimes even more mad. Because sometimes the mind-made entity gets in there and looks at what they did and it says, I did that. That was me. The greatest illusion. And then, of course, it feels very special. The ego then derives it identifies with whatever came out of the state of no ego and says, I did that. And then begins to believe what other people are saying about you and that you are the greatest. Because they project their images of specialness onto you. And then, oh, the great pop star, whatever. and the great pop stars also, they have when they compose their songs, or some of them, where there's even a glimpse of aliveness and freshness. Yes, there's something there. And then the personality, the person comes back the moment they step back from the act of creation or the performance. They step back and there's the old personality, and sometimes it's a dreadful burden for some ability that comes from the non-personal realm to be integrated into the personal, and they just can't do it. It's totally misperceived, just as the world misperceives it, and then they believe themselves to be very special. And there comes a huge conflict between power that comes out of the formless and the limited person that misinterprets it and claims something out of that. And the magic that comes from the formless realm into your life is what, when you look at our civilization, it seems to be gone completely, because the civilization is almost totally not sacred, it is profane, it is a dreary, burdensome structure that humans have created. When you look at the mainstream civilization, and so many humans no matter what country you go to, they seem to be tired. They are weary. There's a weariness that they carry, and the civilization is grinding them down. Another day of dreary activity, of pointless running around. And even those who are still running around, they know deep down it's pointless. What is the point? And you ask the big executives in companies, where are you going? Why are you running around like mad? And they can't give you an answer except that, well, we are expanding. The organization is expanding. We are swallowing up other organizations. And that's our reason for being, is to grow, to get bigger. It's to accumulate more. And so it's all, this is why we are, and it's totally meaningless activity. And so there are many reasons why the entire civilization is reaching a point of collapse. And one is that the humans who are still sustaining it, they can't carry the burden of their self-created structures anymore. The over-complicated world, absurd complexity for the sake of complexity that they have created, and they cannot carry their own burden of their own creation anymore. Mind created, just a reflection of their state of consciousness, in which there is no gap in the stream of one form after another, one thought after another. The voice in the head that never stops speaking becomes a civilization that is obsessed with form, that is obsessed with things, and therefore knows nothing of that which you could say is the most important dimension of human existence, the sacred, the stillness, the formless, the divine. All these have become meaningless in our civilization. And yet, many humans are beginning to realize what's happening. And so there is in many a search for something else. And that number of humans is growing every day. And that's the beauty of it. So, each one of us here is part of the transformation of consciousness that's happening on the planet. It's not going to happen, it is happening. If it were not happening, you could not even sit here. It would be intolerable to sit here. And yet, there may be something in you, that's the old consciousness, that doesn't want to be here. You may occasionally feel that arises. There's something that doesn't even understand what is being said, that hears only the sound of the words, and says, it can't go to where the words point, so you get stuck with the form, the sound, stuck with the thought, and says, presence, stillness. Well, you haven't actually explained what you mean by stillness. So this is a good example where the word is only the pointer, and then you have to jump off the word. Stillness points to stillness. It's not something to be believed in. And the stillness, of course, is already in you. It is not something that we need to create here. We need to bring about by doing the right things, and then eventually we'll become still. Follow a certain course of a recipe. If you do A, B, C, and D, you will finally become still. That's very seductive. But you have given yourself something to do before you can be still, which means before you can find yourself and be yourself. That is the problem of every method, every spiritual method. Not that I will outright condemn all methods. But the danger with any method is that it gives you time. It says, okay, you will arrive and find yourself. Why not find yourself already? Why create something between yourself and yourself? So the stillness that is already at this moment in you fully. The stillness out of which the thoughts come. Every thought comes out and then goes back in. Sense perceptions get you a little closer to it. When you perceive, and do not label it, whatever you perceive, you just let it be. Then there is the perception, the form, and there is the, one could almost say that this is a limited analogy. No analogies are that great, but you could say there's the canvas on which the perception is painted. There is a background of spacious stillness. That's yourself. That's the consciousness that you are, formless, not the conditioned consciousness that is the forms in your mind, thoughts. They are there too. But simply being able to sense that which underlies whatever you perceive or think or feel. Gurdjieff put it, in the Russian teacher who lived at the beginning of the 20th century, put it like, he called it self-remembrance. And of course that can be misinterpreted as if you had to think about, okay, let me remember who I am. My name is such and such. And no. He meant to remember, not even to remember, words are never right. To know the knower, to know who knows this, who in a dream, let's say you dream, and then you wake up and say it was only a dream, it was unreal. Of course it wasn't totally unreal, because something within the forms that arose in the dream must have been there to enable these forms to exist. There must have been a consciousness in which this dream unfolded. And so, in other words, there must have been a dreamer of the dream as the consciousness in which it happened. And that is the timeless and formless dimension without which forms would not exist. And so our normal existence is very much like a dream, because just like a dream, everything dissolves fairly quickly. Every situation, everything is, and even the seemingly solid reality that surrounds us is not really that solid. First of all, there's nothing solid, it just appears solid, it's just energy fields in motion, and they're not going to remain in that form for very long. If you could look more deeply, you could see everything is already dissolving. It's a temporary, it comes into form and dissolves. the bodies that are sitting here are already dissolving. Even this table, it looks, if we look in 200 years, it'll still look more or less the same. But if we could speed up on camera what happens to this room over a period of 3,000 years, which is very little on a global scale, then we would see that even all seemingly solid objects are crumbling. And within 1 minute, you would see everything becoming dust and then disappearing. And it would be a shocking and liberating thing to watch a film like that shows you what is actually happening to the seemingly solid world around you. And deep down, it's a liberating thing when you see how short-lived every form is. Because what is it in you that sees that? The short-lived nature of all forms, and you witness that. That is the aware presence. From the stillness, you see that. And actually you become more still the more you see how short-lived every form is, and you don't run away from that fact. Just stay with. Let's see how important it is to face death in your life, which is everywhere, which is what our civilization is trying to hide continuously. There's no death. Don't never look at a dead body, because it just isn't done. So there are people who have never seen a dead body, and you certainly, if it's not a close relative, you would not be able to see a dead body, because the civilization needs to hide death, because it's the most threatening thing to somebody who is totally identified with the world of form. Death is the most dreadful thing, and you must not think about it or talk about it. And so, whenever you are faced with death, there is, and even just watching it. And when the table dissolves, that's death too. If you saw it over a period of 3,000 years and saw it crumbling within a minute, the entire room and everything in it goes, oh. Or you would see a human being being born. Somebody showed me a clip, apparently it was from some ad from some country. It takes 1 minute. Baby is coming out of the womb and shoots out like a cannonball into the sky and screams all the time. But as the baby travels up into the sky, it already begins to grow and grows and goes higher and higher, and finally reaches full maturity, and then starts going downhill. Is still screaming. and the closer, and then becoming an old man as he approaches the ground, hairs falling out, and finally the last scream, and vroom, he lands in the grave. and it says underneath, life is short. Now, whether the people who made that film knew that they were making a spiritual film, I don't know. I think they were selling beer or something like that. But that is deeply spiritual when you see how quickly everything dissolves, and you don't run away from that fact. And that again, what I mentioned yesterday, the Old Testament prophet who said, vanity of vanity.